Everybody, it is Scott Schnars, and this is another episode of Lunch Money with Scott and Edan. And thankfully, I'm joined by Edan again. He is back from his trip with his family. Welcome back, Edan.
Oh, good to be back. I missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too. Thank you. Hey, the one thing that I think a lot of people have been thinking about here, we're at January 15th at time of recording, so we're 2 weeks into the new year. And I think a lot of the people that I've talked to are not freaking out, but they're starting to think about like, how do I ensure that I hit my 2024 plan or 2025 plan? And one of the things that I'm, thinking about for today is like, let's have a discussion about how do we ensure that our listeners are laying the right foundation to have a really successful 2025. And I think that it starts with kind of looking at and reassessing and aligning on the goals that they have. As you think about like what the year is, like you don't want to be, coming into these goals with surprises. You really have to ensure that the targets are very clear, that they're realistic, they're aligned with the company objectives. So talk about that. Like as you think about the year and we think about setting goals for, any year that you've run sales organizations, like how do you think about making sure that everybody from the kind of the entry level SDR on your team all the way up to the CEO is perfectly aligned on the goals that the sales organization has to go hit.
Yeah. And it's a good point about the point of the year of trying to make sure that you set everything up and that you need to set up things beyond the basic calculation. So I always break it into three things. There's there's the vision, there's goal, and there are expectations. I think people mainly focus on goals and the numeric ones, especially in sales. Like, okay, here's the amount of revenue I need to do. Here's the how many leads I need, and this way you just do the math and figure out how do I break out and who gets whatever number. So it's very clear for every individual what their numbers are. But to your point, you got to make sure that these numbers align with what the company's trying to achieve and to come beyond the revenue number. Sometimes it's margin, sometimes it is market share, sometimes it is traction in certain regions. So you got to make sure that you, as the leader, connect the dots, not just so you would be connected, but so the team will understand it. We talk about the foundational aspects of how do you set up for success. People need to know that what they're doing, what is it contributing to, and then they'll perform a better job. I think the other part of it is kind of your expectations. Um, and this is the expectations from different individuals and different roles. And what does excellence look like? And this goes beyond, oh, make your number. It's also how you make
Yeah.
your number. And the expectations of what are your regular cadence. So there's things about you want to have forecast accuracy, right? You need a very good regiment of execution to get accuracy in. And so there's this list of things that you want to define about what am I expecting from each of my roles and what does high performance looks like for each of these roles and have that very clearly kind of articulated and set up. So it's like the how does this fits with the company goals? The numbers, which I assume most VPs and CROs are doing, it's kind of the default motions that you have. But then the expectations, and that really sets people up to kind of be in a place that they have a very clear understanding of here's what I need to do, here's what it contributes to, here's what my expectations are, that this is the way I'll do it. And it's funny because some people would say, oh, it's the soft stuff of sales, but sales is half soft, half hard. So it is an important part. And you see, when there's the alignment, where there's clarity, you'll perform better. The team will perform better.
It reminds me of there's an old anecdote that Vince Lombardi would stand up at the beginning of every football season and hold up a football and say, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And really, he was like laying the foundation for like, we're going to start, let's go back to basics and get to scratch. I think one of the most important things that I learned working with you is the importance of not only defining excellence at the beginning of every year, quarter, month, and making sure that everybody is aligned to that so that they know what they're doing, but also like, when you define what excellence looks like, I find that people are do a good job of holding themselves accountable to that. And so it's such an important thing. I think like if there's any action item from this conversation that you and I are having today, it's if you are a sales leader, sit down and take a couple of minutes this weekend and define what do you think excellence actually looks like on your team, and build out a model and hire people just for that are excellent.
And by the way, and it would make your quality of life and your quality of performance
So much
significantly
easier.
higher. because it's like sometimes we get frustrated, and each of us get frustrated in a different way from the people that work for us. And by the way, even as an individual AE, you get frustrated with the people on your team. And the biggest reason is of the frustration is because you have a set of expectations that they don't meet. But sometimes they don't even know that these are your expectations.
Right.
And so if you don't do at least a level set, then you'll get more and more frustrated. Which again,
Yeah.
frustrations is a drag and slows you down. It's a highly competitive market and world out there. So if you don't get your act together, you're not going to win.
Now, we hit on this the other week prior to you going on holiday, and that's the prioritization of pipeline health. I don't think we need to go into too much depth, but I think if you're going to set yourself up for a good year, like you need to sit down and you need to do a real audit on your pipeline. You've got to look at the what deals are at risk, what are the high probability opportunities, how do you make sure that those high probability ones don't slip. Um, Everybody that I talk to right now is like in a huge demand for more pipeline. Like everybody wants more pipeline. So I think part of it is like emphasizing that pipeline generation. Where is that coming from? And as you know, AI SDRs are clearly failing by every account and every person that you talk to. Figuring out pipeline generation is going to be something really critical, and I think we might have to start going back to old school selling, where salespeople actually have to go generate their own pipeline versus having an SDR do it for them. And part of that is looking at your tools too, right? Part of that pipeline health is, do I have the right tools in place to make the team successful?
And when it comes to pipeline, this is in every year, if you really do a good job of cleaning up the pipeline at the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, you will have a pipeline crisis. Because if you truly are looking at the
Yeah.
picture as the real, then there's going to be a deficit in 95% of the cases. And it's interesting. We do that usually in the beginning of the year because we feel like, oh, we have a runway. We less do it in the middle of the end of the year. We're more hopeful of things. By the way, I don't think that you have to throw away stuff from the pipeline. You just need to categorize it in the right categories. So, oh, these are real, these are stretch, these are hopa hopa, and these are garbage. And it's and just put them in the right category and then make the right investments in them. Right? Don't put the investment you put on a great opportunity the same one on a hopa hopa one. But
Action on a make Hopa Hopa forecast category in Salesforce.
I think it's the best characterization of some of the stuff there. There's something you want, but it's yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think it is, and you have to think about how do I go build pipeline. And to your point, there's no one magic pill. And by the way, talk about pills, everybody's using all the pills, so it's not like you will gain too much of an advantage. And it would go back to also preparing. We didn't talk about, you know, kind of enablement and the world, which is part of what you want to set up. But you have to do and figure out the things for your sales team about, okay, what are the use cases? Who are the personas? What are the ICPs? What kind of conversations do I have with them? What problems am I solving for them? Being very much centered about how do I deliver value and to whom and how to communicate this, which is a work that should be done for sales. Sales is an execution group, right? They're not the one defining it. It trickles down. Product has to define why they write the stuff they write, and product marketing needs to kind of package it, and then sales enablement make sure that the people can kind of get that, and it trickles down to the sales team, and the sales team has to practice how to deliver it. Um, but they shouldn't be coming up with it. So the other thing as a leader you can do is set these things up so your team will be able to go execute.
Well, that brings up a really interesting point in that, in order to be able to deliver that successfully, you've got to have really strong relationships with all of your peers inside of the organization. So talk a little bit about how you've done that internal collaboration with marketing, with CS, with product to align that sales strategy to what their strategy looks like to make sure that there's not this discrepancy at any point throughout the year.
Yep. So I think there's like these circles of collaboration you need to have. So we can start from the outer circle, which is really it starts from product. Most companies are product companies. Um, and so product really determines this is the features, the capabilities we're going to build into the product because it's going to make that kind of an impact on the customer. So you need to get the guidance from product of why do we have that feature and why do we put that effort to put it in there and what it's going to solve. Um, and so you want to get exposed to that raw thinking so you'll know it. Then you got the circle of the product marketing world, which their job is I need to take these things and translate it to materials that could be used. And then it gets into your demand gen team, whether it sits within the CRO organization or is a separate one. But these are the guys in the forefront of I'm going to go out and reach out and use these messages to engage in the conversation. I need to understand what are the conversations they're starting so I can align with that. Um, and then comes your team, even within the team, to make sure that everybody's aligned, that the SDR is aligned with whatever conversation and the people we want to talk to and what do we want to talk to them about, that the SC on the team is understanding what their roles are and what role they play when we start engaging and what role do I play and what do we need to do. And that you're very well communicated with the revenue operations team of the technology you need to have in hand and how it helps you.
How
Um,
do you build that feedback loop back to all of the different teams, right? So like, you have all, as a sales leader and with all the sales team reporting to you, you have all of these people that are giving you customer information, right? How do you take that back to those your internal partners and go like, hey, look, here's what we're hearing. How does this change our playbooks? How does it change our strategy? How does it change our pitch? How does it change everything to get them all on board with that?
So you can create some structure within the company and its operations to facilitate it. So, for instance, like a monthly or quarterly product portfolio meeting, where product talks about what they're going to do, and the other departments like sales, customer success give the feedback of what they're seeing and what they're thinking about what product is going to do. So you facilitate these kind of big milestones so everybody gets in the same room. Um, Second, your role as the leader of sales is to communicate. Now, the tricky part about being just the leader of sales is that your data points are very limited to the games you get traction. Um, and so you always want to preface that, for these worlds and these wins, this is what we need. But going back to, if product wants to a different direction, we'll follow it, but kind of create that balance. Now, tactically, you have RevOps that helps you collect a lot of data and anecdotal to associate with that. So that function becomes really, really important for you to get the data points. You have your feedback that you get through your leader. So if you are the direct leader of a team, collect information from your sales reps, but put the filter on of which ones do I sifting through that is valuable to give feedback, which ones are anecdotal or situational kind of thing. And number three, dive in, go meet some customers and get your anecdotal. So you can create a really complete picture between the data side, the your people's feedback and your own perception, and then you have a good position to make a very educated kind of feedback loop to the company. Second thing, set the sets of expectations of what you expect to get in return. You're not just, hey, I gave you the input. It's you're doing it for the reason of I either have some success that I would like to double down on, or I have some areas of challenges that I would like to figure out how to go address them. And set the expectations that your partners, product marketing, whatever construct the company has, finance, or whoever controls some of these things, these are the expectations in return. Give me guidance. I'm an execution group. This is not working. Tell me don't sell it anymore. Great. Tell me, oh, these are the values. Great. But I'm expecting answers. So I'm giving you feedback.
Well, that brings up one of my favorite pieces, and that is, as you go into a new year, like it's so important to update your sales playbooks, right? And it's time to sit down and really reflect on, do we have the right value proposition based on all of the changes that happened? And as you and I have talked ad nauseum on this, changes are happening so fast right now that the deck that I got in Q1 is not going to be the same deck that I'm using in Q3, or at least it better not be. And the story and the pitch that I'm telling better not be the same as it was 2 quarters ago, and it better not be the same in 2 quarters. Otherwise, like we failed the sales organization, and it's so as things change, it becomes so critical that you validate that these playbooks, that these scripts, that these objection handling techniques that you have are really relevant, that they're fresh, that they're updated. So you're not saying ridiculous things when you're talking to a prospect, and you need the enablement team to really help figure out like how do you get the sales team trained on that. Which then leads into like you know how do you figure that out? Like I'm a big fan of data driven decision making, right? It's the classic Andy Grove, like data's always going to win. I forget, that's a paraphrase, but when you think about like what worked last year, what didn't work, and why, like how do you look at that data, Don, and figure out how do you change your tack for the following year?
So I think you need to track data all the time. We talked about it a few times, but it's I use the sports analogy. But if you look at professional sports, NBA, football, soccer, whatever you look at, um, they track everything. Everything is getting tracked. Now, later, some of this data points will become valuable, some will not be valuable, but you want to track everything as step one. Um, step two, I think you need to look at this on a regular basis, whether it's after a sales call or after a month or after a quarter, and start looking at what do you identify as meaningful data points and what do you think it means and what changes you want to do. Suddenly, it's not just an end of the year kind of an exercise. More so, there's the old saying of there's competition, there's market. There are very, very competitive markets. The barrier to entry now is very low. A lot of AI stuff that it's not just for sales, it's for development as well. So people can write product really, really fast with AI today. And so you have to keep things fresh. So two lanes you're running with. One, what's working for me so I can double down on it, and what's not working so I can fix it. Two, what is consistently changing in my market? Because new competitors show up from nowhere all the time. Companies change their motions, and the strategy you had against one that you dismissed with a competitor. Oh, they're A, B, and C. They're no longer A, B, C. And you thought it was a big moat, but it's a 2 weeks AI kind of moat
Yeah.
that kind of get fixed. So you constantly have to refresh that. Now, we talked about collaboration. You got the enablement team. Their job is really to have ongoing enablement and training happening. We've done that before about our kind of a weekly university meeting and weekly training. So this is kind of the cadence of how to get to the sales team. But you also need the same cadence coming from the other groups of whoever's in charge of looking at the competitiveness of what's going on in the market, whoever's in charge of the message, whoever's in charge of our position in the market. Those have to be constantly freshed up. So you're relying a lot on enablement, a lot on product marketing, a lot on whatever team you have that is connected to the market. And you should be expecting that every month we refresh or update what we do. I would say one other thing that is overlooked a lot of time, and that's the practicing sessions. So there's one thing about, oh, here's your new slides. There's another one of how do I, as an individual account executive or an SC or an SDR or even a sales leader, because we're in the front line, we go meet customers. How do I become really, really good at presenting, making my comments, asking the questions, managing the conversations, figure out what do I need to get out of these guys and connecting with them and constantly get my skill level up and up because the market is getting more competitive with people. And if you want to be the best, you have to be the best.
Yeah. I'm such a
And
huge fan of role playing in sales situations. And yeah, as you saw in like some of the deals that we worked on, like we would practice for 40 hours for a 2 hour presentation, and we would role play all these answers. Alex Kramer, one of the best salespeople I've ever worked with, he would write down all of the questions that he wants to ask, and then he would have flowcharts of the answers of like what's happening there. Like it's such an important thing, which leads to like investing in training and development. Like how do you know, I think a lot of organizations will do like a sales training at the beginning of the year. They do like the weekly or bi-weekly. Hey, we're going to do an enablement call. Like, but it never, in my experience, like it's hard to make that stuff stick. And I'm curious, like, beyond just like here's like our bi-weekly enablement session. How do you get those bi-weekly or weekly enablement sessions to actually be sticky and get people to put them into use?
so I'll break it into there is the session where you share or communicate new materials or new positions. So it's kind of the educational track of it. And then there is the session of where you practice. And you have to build this, whether it's you and the manager, the manager individual working together on it. But you mentioned even you and I would have before a big meeting that you went to, or we would practice and we will go for the hard
Absolutely.
questions and practice the answers. And sometimes you'll have answers that you didn't have good answers. You ask me, I'll try to answer it. Yeah, it wasn't a good answer. Nice try. Let's try
Right.
something else. And so we would play it out until we figure this stuff out. You have to allocate that time, whether as the individual one-on-one. I know some of the stuff there's coaching happening around with AI and practicing with AI, which again, I think is a good thing for the individual person to spend on practice. They have to do their own practice. Their practice is not just the time they spend with you, the manager, or whoever it is. It's also their own, and the technology helps you have a counterpart to practice with. But you got to practice, 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 practice. But again, we mentioned before it. The latest stats is that Steph Curry, one of the greatest shooters right in the NBA game, only 2% of the shots that he's making are in real life games.
Wait, what does that mean?
That only 2% of the shots
Oh,
that
oh,
he's making
the
are
other
in
98
live,
are all practice.
are all practice.
Yeah. I mean, it's
And in
huge.
sales, it's the other way around. It's like, and sometimes as salespeople, we feel like, oh, yeah, well, we're good at this. We don't need to practice. Or yeah, it's a little bit, shameful to do it. And it's not, it's you need to have the practice if in order to really perform. and the competition becomes really, really, really tough there.
Yeah. Someday you and I are going to find a sport that we both know about because I know shit about basketball and you know shit about golf, and therefore our sports analogies tend to mix match. But I get what
Um,
you're
I have
saying.
some
That'll be awesome.
I have some
That
golf.
that day will happen. It'll be cricket or something.
I'm just picking one that has
Yeah.
more fans that they will know. I could give the
Yeah.
golf analogies too. I think it's a smaller group though.
Um, and then I guess like the final piece of this, like, now that we've done all of these different things, like we've gone back and we've got our goals set up, we've got our pipeline all dialed in, we've built playbooks that are right, we've got these relationships that are going, we've looked at last year's data and we've adjusted accordingly, we're training people. Let's talk about execution. Like, how do we make sure that there is a daily discipline of that goes to the execution of what these plans are, and how do you ensure that the reps are really clear on like what their daily and weekly priorities are that drive the outcomes that we want to see?
I think it's Joko Wilkins that says that discipline is freedom. Um, and then so you need to build some of these cadence, some of these backbones or pillars of your cadence, like your weekly reviews, the 101s, the looking at the stats, talking to people, practicing. So you build those throughout the week, so you'll have a regular cadence. Um, you want to add to that probably every 2, 3 weeks, having a longer view point of like how does my next quarter looking like. So you working all these things, but step one is just establish these corner stores or these pillars that would help you stay on track or figure out that you're off track or have the opportunity to deal with these things. Um, it probably you should be looking at about allocating 4 to 6 hours a week as an individual to have into these different things. Not more than that. If you go more than that, then you take away from your selling time. Um, but that should be kind of your basic discipline practice to do it. So you don't lose the fundamentals.
So,
Um,
so action item there is to just block out 10-15% of your week to make sure that you are being disciplined on what needs to happen for that day, week, month, so that you
yep.
don't lose track of it. Yeah.
And if I want to be specific, right, look at your stats. We talked about data. Look at your own stats and see how they did. Go review and watch again, like in sports. Watch the tapes. Watch your calls. Figure out what you're doing good, what you're doing bad. Have your session with your manager, your coach, or however construct you guys built in the company to get the feedback and the observations of a third party, kind of what's going on. And third, work on your fourth, work on your weaknesses or on what you have to practice for the week. So that's what you need to do. That's how you keep yourself up at the edge.
Love it. I love it. And with that, I think we're at the end of another episode of Lunch Money with Scott and Edan. Appreciate everybody
Um,
taking the time to chat. Hopefully, there's some good action items in here that you can go hit the ground running on Monday with.
have fun with that, and it's a good time. It's really a good time to go and get your act together.
Excellent.